Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It is once again me, Zach, here today with, finally, another Barony guide for you guys. We are continuing our class-by-class playthrough, well not playthrough, but guide series. We had a recommendation, or I guess a suggestion, whatever you want to call it, to do Punisher next, and I think that is a pretty good choice, so we are going to do that today. Let's start with the basic rules here, of course. As always, we are going to be playing a human, because humans have no specific bonuses or negatives, which means that, of course, it's the most default experience possible. In addition, as long as you own the DLC, humans can play as all of the DLC classes without you having to unlock them, which gives you a chance to practice the class without necessarily playing as a race that's a bit more complicated than the human. In addition to that, we do have these two settings. Disable friendly fire, which doesn't apply to us at all, so I'm leaving it on so I don't forget when I play with my friends. And hunger is disabled just so that we can talk about stuff without having to worry about starving. So we can briefly look here on the class info. We can see that this is a 2-star survival, 4-star complexity option here. I think that's one of the highest complexities. Yeah, the alchemist, well, the brewer is higher. And maybe mechanist? I guess mechanist is higher. I think Punisher is complicated, but in some of the wrong ways. In addition, we have Strength, Perception, and Charisma as our high chance of scaling attributes. Int and Dex are normal. Con is very, very low. That is a double down arrow, which is never great. We also have even HP and MP at the start of the game. Now, let's get in here, and we'll take a look at all the stuff. Okay, so the Baron has said his thing. We are alone in the shadows again. So, let's start with our equipment. We start with 1 thing of fresh meat. This is a large amount of hunger that it restores, and it is fresh, so, of course, 0 chance to get sick from it. But it is only 1 piece of meat, which does mean that if you're playing with hunger on, you do have to be a bit careful about finding food early in the game. In addition to that, up here, we have our 2 unique items, so we're going to talk about these real quick. The first one is a decrepit crystal axe, which, I mean, yeah, it's not great. You have a very, very high chance to break this because it is crystal and also decrepit. There are some upsides. We do have a decent axe skill, so it's not the worst, but it's not great. It would be best to not rely on this and use it for big sneak attacks and things like that. In addition, we have our Ring of Conflict, which we'll talk about more once we get into the dungeon, but the basics of it are that as long as you have this active, nearby monsters will attack anything in sight. That means they will attack other monsters. So if you're, dealing with a couple of skeletons, they will start attacking each other instead of attacking you. Nothing too crazy there. Yeah, that's it for kind of our basic equipment. Now, we are the only class that starts with a Ring of Conflict, right? Which is interesting for sure, but it is not unique to us. Anybody can find a Ring of Conflict in their game and play around with it if they want. It's just that we start the game with it. Same with the axe. I'm pretty sure we're the only ones who start with a crystal axe, because the ninja starts with a crystal sword, and I don't think any of the other axe boys start with anything too fancy. But the crystal axe is very high damage. We've got 10 attack with it. That's not too bad. And it does 9 damage. Pretty solid stuff. But the real piece de resistance of this class comes from its unique pair of items. Starting with the... Well, you know what? We'll start with the Executioner's Hood, because this is kind of good on its own. It is 0 armor class. However, whenever you inflict bleed from any source, I do believe, you have a chance of getting mana regen from it. Now, That by itself is pretty good on just about any race, but this is the reason why I haven't talked about what races are good with the Punisher yet. We'll go over and talk about it over there in just a moment. The reason is because mana regen is particularly useful for certain races to have access to, but for us, it is still pretty nice to have. In addition to that, we have the whip. Now, the whip has a ton of weird stats, right? So we can look here. If we look at the top section there, the attributes, it has a 20% bleed chance on flanking strikes and a 100% bleed chance when it disarms. The disarm chance it has is 33% when the target is drunk or confused, and 100% when they are immobile or disoriented. Alright, pretty standard stuff. Now, this is all just kind of like a gimmick build, right? Trying to get as many bleeds and disarms as possible. It's cool, but it's nothing really special. You're not going to beat the boss by bleeding him to death, right? I mean, you maybe could, but it would be very difficult to do. Generally, what makes this really good is the fact that, as you can read there at the top, it says ranged damage. The whip actually benefits from strength and dex, it takes half of each, and is actually tied to the ranged skill. That's why we have 25 here. And that's because the whip has a very long range compared to normal weapons, right? And you should play around with this the way that I am right here before you head down into the dungeon. Because it's like a whole block and a half, right? If I swing my melee weapon, we have to be basically at this torch before we can hit the wall. Whereas the whip, we can be all the way back here and still be hitting. This makes kiting much easier for the Punisher. So, let's get into our attributes real fast. We'll do attribute skills, and then we'll go and talk about what races work with this class. And we'll kind of talk about some of the issues with the class before we get into the dungeon itself. As always, we will play through only the first floor, and then we'll call the video good. So, we have -1 strength, con, and int. The int is not a huge problem because we don't have any spell books. Our spells are both innate. We will talk about those in a minute. But they are very weird, so we are going to talk about them towards the end of this discussion before we go down. So the int is a little bit of a problem, but it's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. At least not early on. The Constitution sucks because it does mean you have -1 AC. You are very easy to hit early on. Even when blocking, let's see, yeah, we only get +5 AC when we are holding something, a shield or otherwise. Well, when we are blocking with it, I should say. And we do not have any kind of passive shield increase, so we're very squishy. We're very easy to kill early on, and with only 30 HP, not good for us, right? The low strength is kind of a problem, because we do have a melee weapon that we would like to get some value out of. However, because we can rely a little bit on the whip, it's not the end of the world. We do have +1 in dex, which does affect our whip, but because it is split between dex and strength, I think it just kind of cancels out. Yeah, you can see there at the very bottom of this, when equipped +0 attack from 50% strength and dex. So because we have no... they even out to 0. We just don't get a bonus from that right now. Finally, we have 0 perception and 0 charisma, as you could tell from us not being able to appraise this book yet. And if we go into skills, you can see we have no appraisal. We do have 20 in magic, 40 in casting. We'll get into that. We also have 25 in ranged and 25 in axes. This is, in my opinion, humble though it may be, one of the worst layouts we could possibly have. So let's get into talking about the Punisher's role, and then we'll talk more about the skills and these spells down here, as I mentioned. The Punisher's role is fucking It's question mark, with like an exclamation point after it. The Punisher is one of the most interesting classes, but it is also one of the most bipolar or role confused classes. It doesn't know what it wants to be. For that reason, new players and intermediate players, I would heavily recommend that you go in with a plan. When you start the game, you decide, okay, I'm playing Punisher. Am I going to be whip-based, or am I going to be axe-based? Or am I going to try and transition into a heavy magic playstyle, right? Because as we know, your int and your dex don't scale very highly, right? You're mostly perception, charisma, and strength, according to this right here, right? And this is awful, right? This is terrible for you, because it kind of pushes you towards being a strength-based character, because that is generally the best way to do DPS in the game, is with a melee weapon. You know, hit him with your stick. That is how you want to play the game out if you're just kind of picking the easiest possible route. But because the Punisher is flexible in terms of like their skills and their starting equipment, you might be tricked into thinking, oh, I can just do whatever. But if you try and be like int focused, if you try and play a very magic playstyle, you will be kind of falling behind other classes that do that. Sexton, Arcanist, Wizard, like obviously those ones. Mesmer, they're the big boys on the playground when it comes to int scaling, right? So you're always going to be behind them, but you're also always going to be behind people like the cleric or the warrior, the barbarian, like the rogue, the ninja, any of these people who are better at ranged or melee combat. You are always playing second fiddle if you try to compete with them directly. So if you're playing in multiplayer, highly recommend you pick a fill role, right? You do, like, if everybody else is playing melees, you play ranged. If everybody else is playing ranged, you play melee. And you kind of build around that. If you're playing solo, go in with a plan. Go in with like, okay, I have all these tools, but what I really want to do is this long term. Like, I really want to focus on axes long term. And you build towards that and around that. You do not try and keep doing all of this stuff throughout the entire game, because it won't work out very well for you, right? Your stats start off atrocious. You only have one that is positive and two that are at 0. You start with -1 AC. Your only positive point is in Dex, which only provides you with like the most minuscule possible bonuses. Right now it doesn't obviously apply any, but like even once you hit level 2, that's only going to be a +1, and it might actually lose that because of the strength being negative. So starting out, your Dex, all it really gives you is that +3% move speed bonus, which is cool, and you definitely need it, but it's not a huge bonus, right? It's not a huge benefit to you. Considering that you can't appraise things early on, you might even end up bogged down with a bunch of items that you want to appraise, which will completely remove the speed boost. So you got to be careful of that as well. For all of these reasons, like I said, too long didn't read summary here, always go in with a plan as Punisher. Pick a lane and try to stick with it, whether you're in multiplayer or single player. Right? Now, you always want to be flexible in Barony runs. You always want to be able to like transition into a different playstyle if you find something that's better, because it's a roguelike and random chance affects a lot of things. But the Punisher's not great at that kind of thing, especially because he stays squishy. He has very low scaling cons, so you really can't afford to make mistakes and fuck up your build. These skills do not really help you very much either. The Punisher wants to spend a lot of the early game kiting enemies and not really fighting them directly, and if he does, he wants to get flanking hits. He wants to be stealthing, right? And you are bad at that. Your high casting allows you to cast your unique spells, but like neither of your unique spells are very good at winning you a battle, right? And we'll talk about that more in a second. Your low magic skill means you're not even very good at learning spells that you find in the dungeon. Like it says here, you can only learn tier 1, which is Force Bolt and Light. It's also Revert Form and Rat Form, but you can't find Rat Form in the dungeon yet, so meh. Overall, like magic and casting are always really good to max out. Absolutely, 100% agree. The problem is you just are not very good at magic. You have no utility skills whatsoever. You aren't good at leadership, you can't swim, you have no trading abilities, you can't appraise stuff, you have no tinkering, and no alchemy. That combined with no stealth leaves your ranged and axe skills to kind of be what carries you, but they're both only 25. You are far below. You're at the low end of skilled, right? Very few people have combat skills that are lower than this, unless it's like their second or third. Like, I'm pretty sure barbarians have like 10 in unarmed, but that's because they have like fucking 30 in, like 35, 40? They have a high axe skill, right? And that is, of course, with barbarians starting with a ring of might, right? So when you're playing Punisher, go in with a plan, and keep in mind that you are the trickster idiot of the dungeon, alright? You are the little dumbass of this dungeon. More so even than the jester, you don't have a role. You don't have a cool thing that only you can do that nobody else is good at. You are just a jack of all trades, master of none, and your coolest stuff is your 2 pieces of starting equipment that are admittedly really awesome. It is also worth noting that axes do have a chance to bleed the target. I don't know if it says that anywhere. But pretty much all weapons have a chance of bleeding. I think copper axes have the highest chance for axes, but I could be wrong. Anyway, I can't demonstrate these spells for you, but we can talk about them briefly, and then we'll talk about what races work well with Punisher, and then we'll get down in there and I'll try and survive. The first one is the more interesting one. This is Spell of Inner Demon. So what this does is you hit a target with it, alright, and it will, we don't even have a good chance of casting it. Let's put that away. What it will do is it will summon basically a green incubus that sits there laughing while the target is essentially forced. Like it says here, it inflicts the provoke status. They are taunted. They are forced to attack the inner demon while it is active. And multiple people can attack the same target, right? So if you cast it into a group of skeletons, they might all turn and start beating at it, which is pretty cool. And as it also says, some of the damage dealt to the demon is returned to the attacker, so they are hurting themselves while they are attacking the demon. However, not only does this cost basically all of your mana at 25 baseline, it also costs you 10% of your HP. Now 10% of our HP is not anything too crazy. What would that be? That would be like 3 damage or something, but it's HP loss that you can't really afford. At least if you're playing with hunger turned off. If you're playing with hunger turned on, it's not a big deal. You'll just out-regen it and it's fine. But the fact remains, it's an expensive spell. It is decent, but it is expensive. The other one, also expensive, is the spell of Teleport Other. Now, Inner Demon is unique to us. I don't think there's any way of getting Inner Demon in the dungeon, but Teleport Other, I think there are ways of doing that. So, what this does is, it teleports the person that you hit with it to you. And then, based off of how far away they were, they get the disoriented status. So, that's kind of like a brief stun. Like a brief stun effect whenever they get transported to you. It's okay. The main thing this is for is if we go to... Yes, the disarm chance there. It's 100% on disoriented targets. So the idea is kind of that you would cast Teleport Other, and then you would smack them with a whip, and they would be disarmed. And of course, as noted here, if we hit somebody with a disarm, they are then going to bleed. So you teleport them, you bleed and disarm them, and that then procs your Executioner's Hood, and you get extra mana regen to make up for the fact that the spell of Teleport Other costs 2/3 of your total mana reserve. You can only cast it once before you need to regen. Now, this is decent. I wouldn't build your whole playstyle around it. You probably could, and it would probably be pretty cool. Because the other thing you have to keep in mind is that the whip has greater range, right? Again, demonstrated here. So what that means is you can teleport somebody right in front of you, right? Like, let's say they're across the room there, and I teleport them here, I can back up and smack them before the disoriented effect runs out, and they have to move towards me before they can even get a hit, and I can just move away and just keep smacking. The damage is low, but it's not nothing. Alright? I don't know if I'll get a chance to show this in there. I'll probably be messing around a lot with the Ring of Conflict, but we'll see. So let's briefly talk about other races that we could choose, okay? We're going to cover probably 3 that I think are particularly effective. The first one is skeletons. Now, we can see all of the skeleton effects to the right. The biggest things about the skeleton are A, they don't eat. B, their regen is dog shit. It doesn't exist. And the final thing is they're very slow in the water. Those are the big problems that you would face as, well, strengths and weaknesses, I guess, that you would face as a Punisher skeleton. So why do I think they work well? Well, the first thing is they have good resistances. While they do have 3 weaknesses, Smite is not very common overall. Polearms are more common in the mid-game when you'll be fairly tanky anyway, and maces are mostly common in places, well, actually also kind of in the mid-game, but they start showing up in the swamp pretty often. Swords, ranged, axes, magic, those are common all the time. So that's great. In addition, Skeleton gives you, while you do have the reduced mana regen of the skeleton, you do have increased regen from your hat, so skeleton kind of synergizes well with that. And they do also give you another use for your mana if you choose to not go for a super magic focused playstyle, right? Normally this mana bar would just kind of be sitting here. With the skeleton, fairly early on, within a handful of levels, you will be able to resurrect, and that is pretty nice to have, especially because if you do cast spells, you can get that mana back quickly with the Executioner's Hood. But generally, skeletons work well with ranged warrior types anyway, and the Punisher can absolutely spec into that kind of playstyle, making Skeleton a good fit. Vampire's kind of a no-brainer for this as well. While, yes, the weakness to water is kind of a problem compared to the Skeleton, they have very similar strengths and weaknesses here in terms of the resistances and weaknesses, I should say. The water is a bit of a problem for the Vampire, but you do have Levitate. The big thing is you have even more of a reason to play stealth build by, assassinate, kills, drop blood. So you want to sneak attack them to get the blood. But in addition to that, the vampire playstyle already gives you gives you access to bloodletting, which is another bleed option in your kit. And of course, casting bloodletting and then losing that mana, but causing the enemy to bleed, therefore getting the mana back, is not too bad. It's not too awful. It's pretty decent. Both of those work pretty well with Punisher. The Incubus is the baseline Punisher class. They're not awful at it, but I honestly don't really think that any of these other ones are too crazy, except Goblin. Goblin is sort of good. They have a lower chance of your axe breaking early, and anytime you level up your axe, you'll be leveling up all of your skills, because, of course, you're a goblin, and that's always pretty nice to have access to. But in addition to that, the goblin doesn't have to care about spells too much, so the mana existing isn't a big deal, but the fact that both of your spells are innate, meaning you don't have to learn them from a book, means the goblin starts with both of them. So it allows you to play around with the goblin in a way you don't usually get to a whole lot. It is a little bit more of a sort of, it pops off, after the early game a little bit kind of build, but I do think Goblin is a decent Punisher. I would say personally, Goblin, then Skeleton, then Vampire. I think Vampires are a great Punisher, I think Skeletons are a really good Punisher, and Goblins are a pretty good Punisher. I would avoid Automaton. There's too much overlap in their abilities, and Automatons are kind of weak early. When the Punisher is weak, it's not good. I would avoid Insectoids. They're not like the worst thing ever, but they don't benefit at all from your hood. which is kind of like, again, a lot of the reason you play the Punisher class is for the equipment. So, you kind of be missing out on that. Yeah, and I wouldn't do Goatman either for the same reason as Automaton. While Goatman does get really tanky later on in the game and becomes very powerful, and is honestly pretty decent as a Punisher once you hit that point, the problem is that you are weak early game, and you really don't want to be weak early game in both race and class, right? There are ways around that, and of course none of these are hard and fast rules. If you are a player that's got a lot of experience, then of course I'm not even talking to you about this. You guys know how you're going to play through the game anyway. I'm talking to early and intermediate players who need a little bit of extra help. But that's enough waffling about. We've talked about the skills, we've talked about the attributes, we've talked about your special spells, your special equipment, classes, races, current politics, everything. Let's get into the dungeon. Okay, well, that's the end of that. Alright, guys, this is not going well. I'm having a rough time of it. Try and get these two to fight each other. There we go. Sorry, I'm not talking, but Punisher is a stressful class to play. I honestly think it's one of the more difficult classes to play in the game. I don't know about the most difficult or anything. There are a couple that are a bit more complicated. But, it's rough. It's rough out here. I'm having a hard time. I'll probably cut out the times that I've died, but maybe I'll include one or two of them. A little montage for you guys. But it's tricky because you can get screwed over by so many different variables, right? The first one being the terrain. The second one being enemy density and enemy spawns in general. You saw... Hello? There we go. You saw, like, there was a skeleton there, and then there was another one there, and then there was a rat over there, and it's just a whole lot of bullshit. And because you aren't very good at sneaking, there's not a whole lot of reason to try and stealth around too much. That dude came out of that room so fucking fast. And he still got a hit on me. I thought he would run away when he took that much damage. Oops. But, yeah, I mean, it's just... It's a lot in the early game. You gotta be focused. It's a very tricky class to play for the first couple floors. After that, you know, it's Barony. After a certain point, if you know what you're doing, you'll be fine. One thing I should note for you guys is that your whip has infinite durability. It will always be excellent. It will never die. It can't break, which is very good. You can also use it to kill barrels from far away, which I guess is neat. Alright. We like big open rooms like this. That's kind of weird to say, but big open rooms means the enemies cannot... What the... Why does this have, like, the green? That's weird. It means the enemies cannot get behind us. At least not as easily. It still happened to me, like, 3 times so far, but it's less common. Okay, so we have an appraisal level. That's really good. We're gonna come over here real quick. Peek in here. I don't see anything. So we're gonna head in. Break the barrel from far away in case it is rats. It was not. We're good. Should be safe in here for a moment. So we have a bronze axe. We're gonna swap that one out immediately. We'll keep the crystal axe, but we want to start using the bronze axe, which I'm pretty sure... Does it say? That doesn't say anything about how much of a bleed chance it has. Bummer. So we have this hood, or helm, I mean. We are not going to be using it. We're going to stick with our current equipment. Nice. Aged cream pie. I think I just locked myself out of there. Oops. I tried to be too clever. I outsmarted myself. Oh, well, I can just get over here. It's fine. There we go. Yeah, so we got an iron axe. We'll use that one instead, because it is a little bit more damage. We'll keep both for the moment. See what this scroll is, and then we'll head out. Cursed. We did get some spell books. I think these are just light, though. Which is not super exciting. Okay, let's see. When we find another dude, I'm going to try and... Actually going to turn the Ring of Conflict off. I'm going to try and use my teleporty spell. You can see all these dudes we've killed, all this stuff we've done. We still haven't even leveled up yet. Did I leave that? I did leave that there, okay. Yeah, let's go through over this way. I died in one of these S-bend tunnels because I saw a skeleton coming and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just leave. But another skeleton had aggroed on me over here because my stealth is garbage. So he just came over and beat my ass. It's upsetting. Well, I guess I'm paralyzed. It's okay, it won't last very long. And nobody's around to beat my ass for it, so... I guess it's not a big deal? Question mark? Beware the sack, it might contain bats. It didn't, we're good. No, that boulder has not activated. Weird. Actually, well... Yeah, you know what? I would highly recommend keeping bear traps like this, even though they're not great. I'm not going to go through the gnomish mines, because we're only doing the first floor. But if you were going to play this, you might want to go through the gnomish mines, and the Punisher doesn't really have any good options for that. You know what, actually, I can use axes again. Axes are way faster at this kind of shit. Am I just not gonna find a dude to use my spell on now? Is that how this is gonna be? I guess there's a whole upper right area that I haven't been in yet. So let's head that way. Oh, that's incredibly bad. I don't think we can use the spell I wanted to use on that. Oh, Jesus, he killed it so fast. Alright, so that would be... Oh, God. Ow. Hold up, back up. Eat the food. But first off, this is why you don't fight slimes in the early game. Second of all, that's why you don't rely on that spell. I think he fucking outranges me, by the way. But we can do that. We can just backpedal while smacking him. Let's eat this. Okay, it was a little bit risky, but we are fine. Highly recommend playing this class with hunger turned on. Okay, I don't have enough mana for this spell. But let's get this dude out into a better position for us anyway. Now I have enough mana. So, see if we can get him to stop moving. I think he just knows. So if we cast this spell, then he's disoriented. We can get a big stealth attack on him. That was actually quite a bit of damage. God, we do 0 damage though. Strength is still at 0 though, so I guess it makes sense. Worthless, read that. This is probably just light again, but poison resist is nice. Yeah, it's light again. But yeah, there you go. That's the spells in a nutshell. I mean, with even more careful usage, you can get more value out of them. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like a master at the Punisher class. But like I said at the beginning, or towards the beginning, keep in mind how difficult this class can be. You know, go in with a plan. I only really don't have a plan this time because I'm trying to show off a little bit of everything. And I think you can kind of see, like, how that's not the best way. I think these are boots of speed. That would actually be kind of gigantic. So let's tuck ourselves away here for a second. You can kind of see, like, trying to do a little bit of everything has sort of just left me with not a whole lot going on. I'm relying on appraisal currently to get levels. Nice. This is a huge pickup. +2 boots of speed is awesome. Let's try not to run to our death. At the speed of Mach 10, but it kind of looks like we don't have anywhere else to go. Let's head down here. We'll head over to the exit. So was there like... yeah, there was more. I haven't seen any chests on this floor, have we? Nothing over here. Toss that. Tomahawks are good. That's another thing you'd want to hold on to if you were playing through the entire game. Good for kiting trolls and stuff. Not as important on the Punisher compared to some other classes where you always want to have some kind of ranged option, because your whip makes for a pretty decent ranged option. I mean, you saw me kiting that slime and stuff. There's a chest. And let me squeeze through. Eat that. Eat that. Alright, back up to a decent amount of HP at least. Okay, well I think that's it. That's the entire floor. At least the bulk of it. Anything else is probably not super important. But yeah, there we go. A successful run through of the Punisher. Don't take that out of context. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a complicated class. It has a real identity crisis going on. Hold up. It wants to be a lot of things, and it's not supremely good. Wow, that's a good pickup. It's not supremely good at any of them in particular. With extremely careful and patient usage, you can get a lot of value out of it, absolutely. But it is one of those things where... oh, nice. Sleep. That's huge. What else did I get? Oh yeah, these. Both worthless. But it does require that patience. It does require you to kind of... that's a cool hat. To do things like this, right? Where you have to, like... you activate the slime, you run away from the slime. And then you use this ability to piss off the slime. And it's not even taunted. I mean, it is, but... the demon spawned in a weird spot, so... it's so dumb. Slimes are cranked now, dude. But this is what I mean. I got impatient, and the game punished me for it. You have to be so patient. You have to be so slow, so methodical. And yeah, it's very safe if you do those things, and if you are, you know, not like me. If you activate 100% of your brain, you can perfectly, flawlessly kite enemies around. Really? Nothing? Huh. Those almost always produce slimes. I got unlucky. Either way, it can be very safe with the whip. You know, get used to the range, play around with it. It is significantly better than other weapons, though a little bit slow to use, but that's fine. You've got, you know, the Ring of Conflict. This is great in the Gnomish Mines. It is a decent option for the Gnomish Mines, but yeah, it's so easy to just fuck up and get absolutely split in half, because even now I only have 2 AC, and that's with +3 boots on. My con still hasn't gone up. And I'm getting significantly boosted because of my dex. I mean, we can probably come in here now and see +3 attack from 50% strength and dex. Not bad. But you'll notice, like, our charisma's gone up twice. Like, what does that do for us? What do we do that is charisma focused? Absolutely nothing. You know, like, Our perception's at 4, but that's because of these +2 glasses we happen to find. Normally they'd only be +1, which is helpful because this is a ranged attack, so this will pierce a bit more often. But yeah, it's Punisher, one of the harder classes in the game. You really have to know what you're doing. You have to get into it. You have to pick like what role you want to play, and really commit to it. Yeah, you just generally have to lock in to play the Punisher. It's not necessarily a bad class, but it is a complicated one. It's one of the few classes where I would say pick an exotic race, because if you pick one of the skeletons or the vampires or something like that, I legitimately feel like you'll have a better time of it than playing like human or even Incubus Punisher. Though Incubus has some cool tricks as well. Either way, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for tuning into this. I should have another class guide up by the end of this week. I'm trying to get back into it a little bit. Real world stuff has been preventing me here and there, but like I said, by the end of this week there should be at least 2 per week going forward, and hopefully whenever the DLC is released I will have income and I will be able to purchase it and go through those classes and races as well. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I haven't actually done like the YouTube outro in a while, so sorry if I'm forgetting anything. If you have a request, leave it in the comments. I'm probably going to be recording the next one before this video goes up. It'll be Wizard, I think. So any requests will go after the Wizard video, but it will be the next one that I do. So yeah, until next time, have a good one. Thanks for watching. Peace.